Hey good folks, Ran Ben Avram here for Cgtuts, and welcome to the second lesson of this ice cream bar tutorial. In the previous tutorial we have built the ice cream bar mesh. In this tutorial we are going to deal with the textures and meshes. You must be wondering why I'm in After Effects and not in Photoshop, and the reason for that is that, well, I feel more comfortable in After Effects than in Photoshop. It's my favorite tool for a variety of tasks, and starting from compositing, video editing, and even texturing for Maya. So, without further ado, into my assets folder under stills, I have imported the TIFF images that we have exported out of Maya. We'll start off with the ice cream and create a new composition out of it. Let's rename it to ice cream texture and move it over to precomps, and here in precomps I'll create a new folder called textures. At the moment we don't see anything. Let's turn on the background, and there it is. And also here I have got a picture of decorative paper which I've got from Cgtuts that for me resembles ice cream very much, so this is the reason I have chosen it. We'll drop in here. And although it's not a good idea to scale up your textures and rather get a larger image file as your texture, at this particular case it won't make much of a difference, since we are not going to be that close to the ice cream bar, and it's a pretty big scale of texture. I mean, it's 3000 by 3000 pixels, so it will work out fine. Let's just scale it to the minimum that is necessary and apply repetal. Instead of duplicating the layer, expand on the right side, repeat or unfold if you will, but it doesn't really matter. Let's duplicate this one and move it over here. We'll scale it back to its original 100% size and reset the petal. Now, since we've scaled down the outer ring UVs, what we need to do is scale down the paper texture as well, so these will appear to be at the same size. And we'll scale it by approximately 50%. I'm not going to go that far, I'm going to go to 60, and if I'll later on find that needs to be a bit larger or a bit smaller, I can always go back and change it. So I would like to expand this texture upward, but this time around I do need to choose unfold so there won't be any seams, and expand up until we get there. Next, let's apply some color correction here. So let's go to hue and saturation, and let's see, something of this sort should be fine. Let's copy it to the other one as well. Next, I want to create that swirly thing going on in the center. We'll create a new layer, doesn't matter which color. Let's go to my mask tool, and I'll just start painting on this lovely swirly thing. Okay, something like this should be fine. This little vertex isn't that necessary. Let's move it here. Let's fix up some stuff here. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this. Now let's use 3D stroke and apply it to that. Actually, the original color was very nice, so we'll keep to that. We'll keep that, or maybe something more live. Okay, now let's go to taper and enable it. Let's get rid of the mask view for a second. Okay, now let's thicken it up. Okay, maybe a bit thicker. Okay, now let's reveal the mask once again and start rounding stuff up here, because the way it breaks here doesn't look too nice. I'm pretty happy with this. We'll call this swirly, and let's try some blend shapes. By holding down Shift and plus or minus, I can browse through the blend shapes, see what works for me best, and I think overlay is the one for me, but we need it to be a bit brighter. Okay, this is it. Let's duplicate this one, go to mask and duplicate the mask. Let's move it here. Next we'll add the logo on our ice cream, and again in my assets folder I have the Tuts plus logo PNG file, and rotate it to -90 degrees, scale it up a bit. I do want the logo to have the same texture, so I would not like to add to it the overlay transfer mode, but however I don't want the swirlies to be seen through it. So what I'm gonna do is switch back to normal mode, duplicate this one, rename the first one to mate. Let's turn off the second logo for a second, excuse my pond, and switch the swirly to alpha inverted mate. And now I've punched a hole there, and if I'll bring back my Tuts plus logo and set the transfer mode to overlay, I now have the texture without the swirlies interfering in it. So let's just add a fill effect to it and change the color to a dark orange, one that would stand out. Okay, duplicate these two. Let's switch them to the top and drag them here, and we'll need to duplicate this one as well. And right now it seems we have too much orange and too much of everything. So what we need to do is go to the first swirly, delete mask 2, go to the second swirly, delete mask 1, and that's it, we are good to go. The back texture is a bit too distinct for me. I think we should add some blur to it. Let's just add fast blur. 1 or 2 should do the trick. That was the side texture. Let's add to the front as well. Maybe 4. Same for the side. 4. And we are good to go. This is our texture. Let's hide the UVs. Control Alt S to save as an image file, and I will choose PNG and we'll save it to my files. I'll name this one to cut ice cream texture, save it, render it. Let's duplicate the ice cream texture, rename this one to bump. We are going to use a very low amount of bump in the shader, and for that we don't need the swirlies and the logo, so we'll get rid of those, and we don't need the hue and saturation anymore, and we'll apply a tint effect. Control Alt Y to create a new adjustment layer, and we'll rename it to tint, and let's apply tint to it. Okay, we'll render out this one as well. And now let's deal with the stick texture. We'll create a new composition out of the Tut stick out UVs, move it to textures, rename it to stick texture, and just drop in the plywood picture. Control Alt Shift G to fit to height. Hide the UVs and render it as a PNG. Let's switch over back to Maya and build the shaders. Okay, so here we are back in Maya. We'll start off by creating the shaders for the ice cream. Let's go to Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. For the ice cream I'm going to use a blend shader. Let's double click on it to get to the attributes. First we'll rename it to ice cream shader, and let's apply the texture we have created. Go to file, and I'm looking for Tut ice cream texture. Okay, Open it up. Let's apply it so we can see it's sitting well. Right click on the shader and go to Assign Material to Selection. And hit 6 on the keyboard to see the shaded view. And let's get closer here. And as you can see, the texturing is sitting very well. And obviously the side and the front and the back doesn't connect perfectly, but it's close enough, and since we're going to be looking at it from distance, it's good enough. Okay, back to the shader. Let's apply the bump, and the bump depth we are going to use is 0.1 since we want a very low amount of bumpiness. Blend by default is a reflective material, and I don't want any reflectivity in the ice cream, so I'll set the reflectivity to 0. We'll set the eccentricity to 660, and I experimented until I got these numbers, and these numbers might not work for you, so I do recommend you to experiment by yourself and get the best numbers for you. But for me, these are the numbers. So for the specular roll-off, we'll use 250. This is it for my blend. I'll move on to create yet another blend material, and we'll rename this one to stick shader. Okay, and we'll apply to it the texture file we have created for it. Okay, let's apply it to the stick, and it's also sitting very well. I do have one suspicion that I haven't used the right file for the bump, so let's see. Yeah, I didn't insert any file to the bump, sorry. So that ice cream bump, open, and just making sure, yeah, 0.1, and I'm good to go with that. Stick shader, let's go back to that. At 640 for the eccentricity, and for the specular roll-off, 6. And for the reflectivity, I'm going to use a very small amount, 0.05. Okay, let's create a very fast and very easy light rig. First, I'll start with a backdrop. I'll create a long plane rectangle, and let's just make sure it's set in the middle. Let's select the edge, extrude it, bring it to the top, select those edges here and here. By hitting R and spreading them on the x-axis, I can make sure they are going far away. And I do want the ice cream to be a bit above the, let's say 0.5 should be fine, or even 1. And let's mark the backdrop, and on the keyboard hit 3. And now it's a very smooth rounded backdrop, and I think we can add some more divisions here. So let's go to polygons, edit mesh, insert edge loop tool, one here and one here, and for the backdrop I'm gonna create a Lambert shader. I don't want to be reflected whatsoever, and we'll call it backdrop shader, and the only thing we want it to be is just a bit more light. That's it. That's it. It's not going to render at all. We just want it to reflect some white light from the background. Okay, now let's create a new light. We'll go to create lights and area light. Let's make sure we're looking at things from the area light by picking it, middle mouse clicking, and dropping it to the point of view. We are now looking at things from the area light, and this is a good spot, I think. We can scale it up a bit. Let's say 5 on the X and 2 on the Y and Z. Now let's duplicate this one and move it to the other side from approximately here. Let's make it 90 degrees. Okay, and bring it a bit closer. Now let's go into the attribute editor to adjust some settings here. Let's go into shadows, mark use ray trace shadows, and we will need to use 35 for the shadow rays and 5 for the ray depth limit to get a smoother shadow. Same goes for the other light. 35 and 5. Only for this one we'll lower the intensity to 0.7. Now I'm at the moment rendering in my software. We'll need to switch it to mental ray and go to Indirect Lighting, and we'll create an image based lighting because we are going to use an Hdr image to light up this scene. And the Hdr image we are going to use is Church Harvest Lobby, which you can download for free over at hdrmill.com. Let's go to View, Camera Settings, and Resolution Gate. Let's see what we're looking at. Okay, so this scene is very dark at the moment. So what we need to do is turn on the final gather, and at the moment we will render in a very low quality. Okay, I can see this is a bit too dark for my taste. Let's set the intensity of area light to 2 and the intensity of area light 2 to 1.4. Let's see how that looks. This is a bit too dark and the colors are a bit flat, but all in all I can fix that in After Effects later on. What I am interested in is the shadows that are very soft and to my taste, and the materials seem to be working fine. I'm not worried about all the spots in the backdrop because the backdrop isn't going to be rendered, the final render. So this is the ice cream bar that the RealFlow chocolate will melt upon, and I would like to create another ice cream bar that will be coated in chocolate for the second part of this scene. So let's duplicate this one. Let's rename ice cream bar to ice cream bar melting chocolate, and now let's duplicate this group, bring it back here, and we will rename it to ice cream bar coated. Let's hide this one for a second, and this is right now our ice cream bar coated. Now when the ice cream is coated with chocolate, it is a bit thicker and a bit rounder on the sides. Let's first go to front view. I would like to scale a bit the ice cream. I would like to scale it from the bottom, so let's hit insert, bring it the pivot down to the bottom, hit R and scale the ice cream a bit, just a small tag. And next I would like to apply to it a lettuce. So let's go to animation, create deformers, lettuce. I think we can have some more divisions on the S divisions. Let's add some more divisions on the U as well. 5. Right click on the lettuce, go to lettuce point, and now let's switch to side view so we can pick just the middle rows of vertices, and we only want the outside shell and not the insides, so unpick those. Okay, and now let's hit R and scale those just a very small amount. Okay, and go back to the side and pick the middle row of vertices. Again, just the shell, not the inside vertices, and scale that up as well, just above the others. Let's go to shaded view, and now we've got this ugly seam going on here. Quick and dirty way to get rid of that: we'll mark the mesh and go to mesh, smooth, and that pretty much does the job. Let's select the lettuce and put it inside the group, and we don't need to see it anymore, so Control H. Now let's create a shader for the coated chocolate. Go to Mental Ray Materials, Maya Materials X Passes. We'll rename this one to Coated Chocolate Shader. And here's the settings we're going to use. First, the color. Again, these are the settings that I found work for me best. 0.039 for the red, 0.017 for the green, 0.008 for the red, which gives us a very dark brown chocolate. For the weight, I'll use 0.880. For the roughness, 0.375. For the reflectivity, here's the deal. We do want to reflect the environment, so 850. However, chocolate, especially chocolate that comes out of the fridge or the freezer, it is very reflective, but the reflection is very blurry. So to get a blurry reflection, we need to switch the glossiness to 0.350 and the glossy samples to 64. And you can even see here in the sample how the reflection is now very blurry. Very sharp, very blurry. And let's go into advanced reflections. And we do want to use max distance, so mark it. And max distance is 30 for us. And we need to use fade to end color, and that color would be .041, .041, and .041 for red, green, and blue. And the max trace depth is 4 for us. Let's apply it to the coated shader, and let's see how that looks. Yes, this is what I was looking for. The way the light breaks on this piece of chocolate is looking very, very well, and I really do like it. And of course, in the final render, we'll get rid of all the anti-aliasing here, and we'll have a much sharper render. But for the moment, I'm very happy with this shader. One last thing I would like to do in Maya before we step into RealFlow, and I would like to create the chocolate chunks that we see in the swoosh transition. So let's hide this one, create a polygon cube, and let's go to the channel box and make it 5 on with height and depth. Let's bring it to its 0 position and drag it up so we can see what's going on here. What we need to do is go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. Under Dynamics, we go to Effects, Create Shader Options, and we need to go to Solid Shader. 5 is a bit too low, so we'll use 30. Regarding the original surfaces, we don't need that anymore, so we'll delete it. Yeah, that's just about it. Let's hit Apply. Give it a few seconds. Okay, let's close this one up. And now what we need to do is just go through these shards and try to find the ones that will work for us. Okay, so we end up with 6 shards, and we'll rename these. And to these shards, we'll apply the chocolate coated shader. Let's hide the other chunks, and for the moment we'll focus on the chocolate chunk 1. And actually I think the lights should be a bit closer. Okay, I would actually like them all to be in the same place, so just let's go to top view, bring this one to we'll center them all approximately in the same place. We'll animate each one of those for 60 frames. Oh yeah, before that I'll need to set up the frame rate of this project, which I really should have done from the start, but better late than never. I'm using 25 frames per second, and thank you, save it. We'll create an animation of 2 seconds, which means 50 frames. We'll rotate them on random directions for 50 frames. We'll mark rotate X and rotate Z for chunk 1, right click on it, key selected, and in 50 we'll rotate it randomly. Chunk 2 will mark Y and Z, key selected, and in frame 50 this one will go approximately there, and this one could go there like this, and we need to go on and do it for the remaining 3. So go ahead and do that. So what I'm gonna do next is create a render layer for each chunk. We'll mark chunk 1, mark the lights, the HDR image, the backdrop, and hit this button, which will create a new render layer with the elements I have picked for it. So we'll rename it to chunk 1. We'll repeat the process to all the other 4 chunks. Next, we'll need to create a camera. And let's see. This can be a good place to start. Let's go to View and Camera Settings, Resolution Gate. We will need this to be at the resolution of 300 by 300 should be the max I would need for this sort of a thing. While we are in here, I'll adjust the render settings for it. So the final gathering will raise that to 500 to get a more accurate render. We'll set the final gathering tracing to 5 by 5 by 10. We'll set the quality to the max samples level to 2 and the filter to Mitchell. We'll set the ray trace to 5 by 5 by 10 and the shadows to 4 by 2 by 2. And what else? Frame buffer, I would like it to be 32-bit, so RGBA float 4 times 32-bit. What else? We'll go back to common and we want to enable color management. The default input profile is sRGB and the default out profile should be sRGB as well. The image format I'm going to use is PNG. I'm going to animate a name, number and extension, and frame buffer will be free for me. And we are rendering from frame 1 to frame 50. We are using the camera 1 camera. Okay, what's left is the name, and the name for this one will be chunk 5. And if we'll right click on file name prefix, we can create a layer over it, so only this render layer will have this name. Okay, let's go to chunk 4. All the settings remain, just the name is different, so we'll change it to chunk 4 and create layer over it. Once again, create layer over it, create layer over it, and one create layer over it. Now, one thing that I have forgot to do is make sure the backdrop isn't included in the render. So I'll just pick the backdrop and go to the attribute editor by clicking Ctrl A, and under render stats I'll need to uncheck primary visibility, so now it's not included in the render. Let's go back to the channel box. Since the create layer over it is created automatically when you are choosing to change anything in the render stats, we'll need to repeat the process for all the render layer, which is why I should have really done it before I started distributing the chunks to different render layers. So we'll do it right now. Primary visibility. Okay, let's do a quick render to see that we are still looking good here. Yeah, one more thing. I forgot to set the primary visibility off for the HDR image as well. So once again, we'll go back to the attribute editor, go to render stats, and shut off primary visibility for all render layers. Once again, something I should have done before I started creating the render layers. So let's do again a quick test render, and we are all good. Of course, this colors seem a bit flat, and we can take care of that in After Effects. Okay, so we'll render out these 5 chunks, and in the next lesson we will jump right into RealFlow and discuss how to achieve that chocolate melting look that we have seen in the preview.